right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kate with the Creative Coast, Director of Programs and Communications for the Creative Coast. Welcome to Lunchtime Topics. If you've never been to a Lunchtime Topic before, this is a weekly program of the Creative Coast where we feature business experts and leaders in the community who have wisdom to share to help startups and the business community in Savannah level up what they're doing. And this week, we're really excited to have Amy Shippy. She is the co-founder of Marche de Macarons, and she also is the founder and owner of Blue Poppy Designs. She started out as a graphic, by trade. She went to the Savannah College of Art and Design and got her start with graphic design, and started her first business in computer training, and soon found that she had a knack for entrepreneurship. And she later went on to found a furniture store that reached 14 million in sales. So as a serial entrepreneur, she's got a lot to share with us, especially about how to start a business with a very low budget. And I'm so excited to turn it over to you, Amy. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. However, good afternoon, everybody. It is beautiful outside, and thank you all for taking some time to join me today. So I'm going to leave some room open at the end for Q&A. So if you have questions, you can jot them down. I'm happy to answer what I can. As Caitlin explained, I am a serial entrepreneur. I have owned businesses since I was about 21. I started actually at about 14 selling lemonade on a golf course in Hilton Head Island, which is where I grew up. So owning my own business and not having a boss is kind of what I've done my entire career. And I've been very fortunate and blessed in the space, but with that, I've had, failure as well. So with success comes failure. And but I'm here to talk to you today about taking an idea. And if you're on, you probably have had an idea for a business. If you give me 4 days off, I'm going to come up with about 15 ideas for a business. But everybody probably at some point in time, if they've thought about being an entrepreneur, has an idea, because that's where all entrepreneurship starts. But really the gap is taking an idea to a reality. And what does it take to do that? And there's a lot of misconceptions out there that it takes a lot of money. I have started businesses for $800 and scaled them over time. My furniture business that I grew to about a $14 million a year company, my father co-signed a loan for $50,000 to get that off the ground. It was $1 million business within 24 months. So it doesn't always take a ton of money to get a business off the ground. It does take a lot of work. Owning a business on your own, people think there's a lot of freedom, and there is a lot of freedom later, but at first there's no freedom really at all. I'd like to joke that the tail wags the dog for quite a long time. And anybody who's known me personally or my children know that when I get something off the ground, they all have to kind of step in. At any point in time, my 3 children have been in my bakery, packing cookies, washing dishes, my husband. It becomes a team effort. But the first thing I want to mention is you've got an idea, and how are you going to turn that into reality? And the first thing that you need to do is really look in the mirror. And you really need to be honest with yourself of what your strengths are, but more importantly, what your weaknesses are. We all have them. I have things that I'm really, really good at, and I have things that I'm really, really not good at. I can do the things that I'm not good at, but I don't do them well. For instance, I am horrible with repetitive tasks. I can do a repetitive task. I have to sit there and mantra myself through the entire process to get it done. I am not good at repetitive tasks. It doesn't kind of gear in. But I can find people that are good at repetitive tasks. And so they can help me by assembling a team of people that amplify my weaknesses by it being their strengths. Then I can focus on the strengths that I have and get things going. So you need to be honest with yourself. Having weaknesses, and women, I speak to a lot about this because women tend to want to say that anything they can't do perfectly becomes a fault. They want to internalize it as a fault. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. And if you've got children, you know what I'm talking about, because they give your children have gifts and then they have areas that they struggle in. And that doesn't make them less of a child or less of a human being or less of something that's going to be successful in life. It's just we all do. We are geared up and we are wired up the way we're wired up. And that, recognizing what that is going to be the greatest asset you will ever take in your journey of entrepreneurship, is being really honest. So figure out both. Starting a business on a small budget requires that I leverage all the strengths that I have. I have to leverage everything I have, and I have to leverage some of the things that I'm not great at. But I also try to work within a community of other business owners and assemble a team. That team doesn't always have to cost money. For instance, a little over a year ago with Blue Poppy Designs, right before the pandemic hit, right before the pandemic hit, it's not even a phone. I had decided I wanted to launch into the wholesale. Sorry about that. I don't know how to turn it off. Launch into the wholesale space with Blue Poppy Designs. And it wasn't a space I was super familiar with as far as retail products getting in stores. By the time I figure out how to unplug it, it'll stop ringing. However, I had a friend that was really good and had experience in the wholesale market. So I called her and I said, you're really more versed in this area than I am. Can you help me get my products on Fair, which is really kind of the avenue that I had identified that I wanted to get on. And she's like, yeah, I know exactly how to do that. And I said, well, if you'll help me, she particularly doesn't like doing books. And I happen to be pretty good at books. And so I'm like, if you'll help me, I'll help you close out your books for the year. She got me up on Fair. Within 2 weeks, she had the spreadsheet all done, the pictures all set up, it was launched, and I was live. I sat down and what took me probably less than 2 hours to reconcile her books for her. And so she got what she needed. I got on Fair, which was what I was trying to do. It didn't cost me any money. It cost me a little bit of my time. It cost me leveraging some of my gifts to leverage somebody else's gifts. But the end product got me where I needed to be. Let me tell you how that paid off. I had 0 wholesale accounts April 1st of 2020. As of this morning, I have 253. Because somebody took their time and their strength, and I took my time and my strength, so it was an even, and got me onto something. Now, last year was not by any means a typical year of being in business. And if you made it through your business last year, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it was the year of, I kept saying everything I was doing was pivoting. Everything I had planned in January didn't come at all the way I had thought. And that taught me, not that I didn't know this about business, but what it taught me about business, or what it reiterated about business, is that businesses are a living entity. It's kind of like when you go and apply for that EIN number for your business, which you have to go do. It's like getting a social security number for your child. That's exactly what that is. That creates that business into being a legal entity. When you have a baby, you get a social security number for that child. That child becomes a legal entity. He can eventually stand on his own, but he's got his own little number. Your business gets its own little number. So it becomes a living entity. If you do have children, I have 3 children, so this is why I spend a lot of time with it. If you do have children, what you realize is that little living entity doesn't always go as planned. All the dreams you had about a little living entity doesn't always pan out the way you thought. So when you're starting to look at putting your business together, that business is a living thing, just like your child's a living thing. And so that means that you can start off on this path and you break your leg. And so now the path that you thought, you can't do that. You've got to make another adjustment. Or you set out on this path and somebody becomes sick. Businesses do the same thing. And the pandemic, I think, showed us a lot about that. Is the plans that you had, the forces that were out there in the world were dictating what you could do. So if you owned a restaurant you no longer could operate under the regular capacity that you operate, and there was no option. It was unheard of that industries as a whole were shut down. Creative Coast is a great example. This is all being done by Zoom, because how many Zoom meetings have y'all attended in the last year? Who got on Zoom regularly before then? We had meetings. You didn't do that anymore. Companies had to create a way to kind of get through it. So if you look at your business as going to be its own little living entity, that means that when you start to create your plan for that business, and I'm guilty of the fact that I've never really been somebody who creates a hardcore in the ground business plan. Almost every business plan that I've ever created looks about like this, on copious amounts of cocktail napkins. I jot them down when I'm driving down the road, or riding down the road, or having dinner, or sometime that ideas hit me, and I will have a collection of things that look like this. And if you looked at my desk, you would see these are all the notes to get this product launched. So this is not like some super big corporate entrepreneurship, is not like that. This is what my business plans tend to look like. They all sit here on my desk, and they get scratched out, or they get modified, or they get written on the back. So when you're looking at putting your business together and kind of figuring out what that business is going to be, people tend to get locked up by the roadblock of creating this formal plan. And so they want to create this formal plan, and they don't know how to create the formal plan. So what ends up happening is they become stalled in the process. And so the business never gets to reality, because you never kind of get off the first. Your business does not have to be super formal. Now, that being said, if you are in, because my topic is mainly kind of self-funding your business, this works. Now, if you're going after venture capital, or you're going after a loan with a bank, they don't like this. They want something definitely more formal. But if you're just kind of self-funding it yourself and launching something off the ground, and even if you do have to put something formal together, you're going to have tons of this first to kind of start organizing your thoughts. The next thing you're going to need to do to make your business from an idea to a reality is you're going to have to start figuring out what your cost to get started is. And when I say that, I've never had a business that looked like itself 3 years later. Blue Poppy Designs, for the first year that I had Blue Poppy Designs, I went to vendor events to sell kitchen towels. I didn't even have a banner that said Blue Poppy Designs. None of my product even had a tag on it. You had to ask me what the price of my product was, because I didn't have tags. I was making product on Friday nights to get to a vendor show on Saturday mornings. There was no time for all the other things. I didn't look like $1 million business. I didn't have this super polished, had a logo. I had some business cards, but I didn't have this super polished setup. And yet I would go to vendor events, and I would sell the heck out of kitchen towels. And they're like, what's the name? My company's Blue Poppy Designs. I sell this. It wasn't professional looking at all. And it didn't matter that it didn't look like it looks now, because now I have tags, and now I have it's more polished. But I was making enough money for each vendor event to buy more blanks to go to more vendor events. It was self-generating its own income. Blue Poppy Designs was able to get launched, had some equipment to buy, but I think about $2,500 is what I had to invest basically in the heat press and the printer. And I could self-fund it from then. I would just go out, I'd throw out my stuff. I can talk to a stone, according to my children, and they're not far off. And I would tell you about my product. I would tell you what I'm doing. I started with kitchen towels. That's all I sold at that time. I now sell candles and tumblers and pillows, and I sell a whole wide range of products. But at first I really only had one design of kitchen towels, to be quite honest with you. That's all I really had come up with. And I just sold a ton of that design. And I was like, okay, I think I have a business. And my husband's like, I think you got a business. I think you got something. And now you can't sell that design after Christmas, so you're gonna have to come up with something else. And I did, but I had made enough money in that Christmas season to launch me into the next quarter. And my businesses run that way. I am not probably a big fan, and I mean, and I know that people are, of over leveraging myself, where I put my house up against up against an idea. Because here's the truth, is 90% of businesses in 2019 failed by year 5. 90% were no longer standing. 21.5% of businesses in 2019 failed in the first year, 30% in the second year, and 50% in the 5th year. So the failure rate, unfortunately, is high in entrepreneurship, but that doesn't bother me because I've had ultra success and I've watched that all fall apart during the last recession. I lost my $14 million a year company. It was devastating. I took some money with Laura and we launched the macaron business, and we've grown that. I'm not telling you those fail rates to scare you. I'm just telling you that you can look at your business in a way that doesn't end up with the final dream product on your launch. You grow to that look, because truthfully, trends change in 3 years. And so what colors were great in 2019 may not be the colors of 2022. You've got to be malleable. So I find a lot of people they don't launch their business because they're waiting for it to be perfect. Well, that's like me waiting to go to the gym until I lose 10 pounds. I'm not making it to the gym because I've got to lose 10 pounds. It's a chicken egg thing. And I'm just saying speed of, not carelessness, but intention from idea to reality builds momentum. And with small goals, and we're going to talk about that in a second, and successes builds momentum and gives you the confidence to go to the next step. So you need to kind of figure out what your startup cost is. And again, part of that startup cost is going to be leveraging your strengths and your weaknesses. So like I said, people come to me all the time. They're like, I need your help doing this. And I'm like, well, I look at what they offer. And I'm like, well, okay, let's see what you can offer me in exchange. I mean, you don't have the money to pay me, but you may have something that I need or something that can help my business. And I'll trade you. I mean, don't do a ton of trade, but I mean, especially in a startup situation, I want to get off the ground. So you're going to need to figure out your startup costs. What equipment do you need? And when I say equipment, what minimum equipment do you need? Not the dream workshop that you want to have later. What gets you making kitchen towels and at a market? The internet business that I launched when I was 25 was rather interesting. So that was in 1997. And in 1997, things like Squarespace and Shopify and those kind of platforms did not exist for web design. So if you wanted to build a website, you actually had to have somebody build your code. They had to write raw code. And a good friend of ours was leaving a banking position, a high-level banking position, and had decided that he saw some kind of wave in this internet space, which, I mean, this is the same time that Amazon was launching, if you want to kind of grasp what I'm talking about. And he said, I want to launch a company that builds websites. And so he's like, what do y'all think about taking your furniture store online? Now, we sold ready to assemble furniture, so it was really kind of ideal at that point in time. And nobody was doing it because it was, like I said, it was the early ages of the internet. I think we still had AOL dial-up or something. And he says, but I need to build a website to have a product to go sell. So everyone whether you're in tech or whether you're in a hard physical product, you still got to have something to sell. And so he goes, I need a website to design. He goes, would you be willing to let me design a website for your furniture company? And that way I'll have a product to go sell to other companies. And so my husband and I got in on that idea, and we're like, well, that's a great idea. We didn't really have a lot of money. He didn't really want a lot of money to start. Again, he was trying to build a platform for him. And my husband talked him into really building a much more robust website than he really had planned to build. but basically told him, he goes, look, if you'll do this, and this is my idea, if you'll do this, then we'll pay you a percentage of our sales in perpetuity while we have the business. And he did. And that first year online, I think we did $1 million. The next year we did $2 million. I mean, to the point that it grew to about 14 million. And I think over the course of, it was a really good deal for him, it turned out, because I think over the course of it, we ended up paying him probably about $3 or $4 million over the time for him to continue to maintain. And my husband kept coming up with ideas on how to grow that website, and we did. And it was a great partnership, but it came out of a necessity for two people. So it wasn't a lot of upfront costs for us. It helped him, it helped us. And then lo and behold, it turns into this something that none of us, when we sat down and had the idea, ever thought it would turn into. So when I say figure your startup cost, figure out a way exactly kind of what you need and as lean as you need. Because if you borrow $50,000 from the bank, they want their monthly payment back, whether you have sales that month or not. And that's what attributes to the large failure rate in businesses. They just run out of cash. They spent the cash that they got from the bank. Now the money's due and they've run out of cash. And that's really the number one reason that small businesses fail. They're under leveraged. The other idea you need to figure out is who you're going to sell to. What's your market? Are they even interested in your product? Which is why I say, take your idea and start getting it out there. Because you can save yourself a whole lot of money by selling kitchen towels without tags on them. But if no one's buying the kitchen towels, then it's really not going to work. And I'll tell you how I figured that out really expensively. Well, expensive, I say expensive. I mean, it cost me about $1,200. So when I originally launched Blue Poppy Designs, my idea originally is nothing like what Blue Poppy Designs does now. I thought I would go to trade shows like Christmas Made in the South, or, you know, little convention shows. And I would take all my equipment and I would have all my blanks and I would have all my designs. And you could walk up to my table and you could pick out this design to go on this product with this monogram. And you would walk around the show and I would make it. And you would come back 20 minutes later and you'd pick up your personalized product. Well, that failed badly, because what I realized after a weekend of that is that 80% of people cannot make decisions that quickly. So they come to my table and they would get this deer in the headlight look and they're like, well, who am I going to buy it? I don't know. And I had nothing for them to pick up and buy. They had to go through this whole process and they couldn't do it. 80% of people could not do it. And so when I got done, my mom had gone and helped me, and she called me when we got done with that. She had gone down for 2 days, and then Rob had gone down for 2 days. My mom's like, well, I just think that business is just a total failure. I don't think that's going to work at all. And I said, well, you know, I think you're right in a way. I think it is a total failure the way that I envisioned it. I wasn't, in this particular instance, I was not capitalizing on that impulse buy, which is what 80% of the people who go to festivals are doing. They're come there to browse, have a good time with their friends, and they want that impulse. I'd taken the impulse away from them because they had to design all this stuff and they had to make these decisions, and that was way too much work for them to do on a Saturday afternoon. So I told my mom, I said, you're right. The way this is a total bust. Cost me about $1,200 extra because that's what I had put into the festival and my hotel and everything. And I lost about $1,200, but I learned something as well. So I learned that in that I needed to make adjustments. So I went back to my studio and I made this little oyster towel. I put oysters in the shape of a Christmas tree with a starfish on top. And I took them to a festival and not even a festival, like a women's tennis thing. And sold the 10 that I had brought, took orders for 30. I had another little event at the Wilmington Island Country Club that night, sold 80 of them that night. My husband was like, what the heck's going on? I'm like, obviously people want oysters set up as a Christmas tree. Sold 500 of them over Christmas. Same design, because that's the only design I had. Because everything else prior to that was all this custom stuff. And I would add your name to it if you wanted to, but I made kitchen towels every night. So figure out what your startup cost. Make it minimum as you can so that you can do proof of concept. And that's the biggest thing about that formal business plan that they're doing, is they want you to create this proof of concept for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, and you have no concept to even validate your proof of concept. So find out who your customer is. Are you selling to moms? Are you selling to the younger generation? Are you selling, who is your customer? And then on the local level, figure out if it sells. As a business mentor, the one thing I get a lot of is like, I'm just going to build a website, and then that's just going to be, it's going to be great. Now, websites are tools, and I would say your business probably needs a website. But without anybody knowing that your website exists, it's just a website. People are like, oh, I'm just going to get on Facebook and Instagram. Well, that's great. But unless you are like a Kardashian with like 14 million followers that you can launch a lip gloss and they all buy it, your little 200 followers that you've got on Instagram probably not going to generate you a lot of money. Instagram is a tool. Facebook is a tool. Your website's a tool. But those are not your launch pad to success. Unfortunately, as a small run entrepreneur, your launch pad is going to be feet on the ground. It's going to be going to networking groups and handing out your card. It's going to be going to anywhere that somebody would allow me to set up a table and sell kitchen towels. When I launched the macaron business, I can't tell you how many nights we would haul ourselves to a small business grand opening, because we got involved with a wonderful man in town that his business was creating grand openings for small companies. And I would go with macarons in hand. I would donate those for a door prize, or I would donate a tower so that the people at the grand opening could eat the cookies, all for free. But that's how I got business, because people, those would be great closing gifts for those. Those would be a great gift at a wedding, week in and week out, 2 or 3 times a week. I was at your grand opening. If you were in 9 years ago, I was at your grand opening with cookies, going, let me give my cookies away. I got to learn a lot of information from it, because I got to see people's response to what I was doing. And I think that is so key, that the internet and Instagram and Facebook aren't going to give you. I got to see the reaction. I can gauge a lot from somebody's reaction. Was it smooth? Was it not smooth? Did they get it? Did they not get it? Did they, were they engaged by it? Did they ooh and ah and tell me that I was, heaven, hands from heaven and manna with my cookies, which was great, because people would just tell you how great you were because you made a great cookie. That never got old, by the way. That was always great. It's always great to be told that you do something really well. I don't think any of us ever tire from being told that we do something really well. The next thing you need to do is set some goals. Now, I do not set primarily 5-year goals. I kind of set in the beginning like monthly goals, and I set quarterly goals, and I set, really don't even look at a year, because I want goals that I can achieve. Achieving a goal, if you're in sales, you know what I'm talking about. So if you're in sales and you go and make that sale and you close that sale, that next sale is going to just be so easy. You're so full of confidence that confidence builds on itself. Same way as when you get an A on a test or something, you want to work because you want to keep that. I actually think you have I think a dopamine drop happens when you have a success and you like that feeling. So I set goals that are super attainable, because the more that I'm winning, the more that I want to keep winning. When I set goals that are not super attainable and I fail to meet those goals, then I start questioning myself. Was that really a good idea? People really don't like it. Maybe they don't really like me. I become this negative voice, becomes the projecting voice in my head. And I can talk myself out of a whole lot of things when that negative voice going, maybe not good. Maybe that just wasn't realistic. I want goals that I can achieve, and I want goals that I can achieve pretty quick out of the gate. Because again, that level of intensity and that level of speed really does do something to you. It benefits you in a mental space, because entrepreneurship, for the most part, is a rather lonely endeavor. unless you've got a business partner or a spouse who's super supportive over what you're doing, entrepreneurship is kind of a lonely endeavor. You're kind of facing all the trials and tribulations by yourself. I mean, I've been very fortunate to have a spouse that will allow me to kind of basically, these are my ideas, what do you think? And after many years of training, he now will actually just kind of listen as opposed to solve my problems. But he's on here, that's why I'm joking with him. But I'm fortunate in the fact that I have a community of people that I go to. I mean, I have launched this new product called Lily Bells. And if you're in my inner circle, I have force-fed you spiced pecans for the last 3 weeks. You have tried all my flavors. You've had to give me honest feedback. Nobody wants to eat pecans from me anymore that are in my inner circle. Because I walk around with pecans in my bag going, who wants to try my nuts? That works out really well when you're a female. Don't do that if you're a guy. But I'm trying to get this launched out there. I want feedback. So everybody out there that's in my inner circle, I'm like, you want to try the new peach one? You want to try and they're trying the pecans. So when you set goals, find people who can help. You want to start achieving those goals. And I'll show you, you probably can't see it, but in my iPhone are my goals. And here they are. And they're something that they're not on a piece of paper that are sitting somewhere on a bulletin board. They are where I can review them. So this is my wholesale account list for Blue Poppy, for instance. So every time I get a new wholesale account, I get to go in here and I change the number and I go up 1 or 2 or whatever. It makes me feel good. I'm getting closer to the goal. When the goal is achieved, I get to go in here, goal met, and then I set a new goal. So if I set a goal that is super quickly achievable, I just modify the goal and I keep moving forward. But these are tools that I use every single day. They sit here with me because we all have this with us all the time, right? I mean, you don't go anywhere without this. So my goal, so I have a goal. I mean, I have one of those for macarons. I have one of those for Lily Bells. Everything I do has a goal attached to it. And they're realistic, not pie in the sky goals, realistic, attainable goals, because I want to feel good about me. If I'm feeling good about me, then I can do anything. If I'm feeling down about me, everybody needs to start worrying, because if mama's down, then we're all down. So I want to feel good about me. I want to feel good about my journey. I want to feel good about my business. So set realistic goals. And I'm gonna end this in a second because I want plenty of time for questions. The last thing you need to know is you need to know your numbers. Now, some of you are going to say my gift is in P&L sheets. I actually do love a P&L sheet. And some people are going, I love a P&L sheet. I love calculating margin and figuring out how much my cost is. I work with a lot of artistic folks in the maker space here in Savannah, and they are some amazing artists. They hate the numbers. Going back to my friend who helped me kind of get up on FAIR, she hates the accounting stuff. It bogs her down. Now, massive, amazingly talented artist. If I'm not good at numbers, if it's not my thing, it's part of your business. You cannot escape knowing your numbers. That is not something that you can, skip. You might be able to skip price tags. You might be able to skip a banner, but you actually cannot skip understanding your numbers. If that is not something that you're good at, or that is identified as something that's a weakness, find somebody that can help you make that up, because you will fall into that 90% category, because not knowing your numbers is what's going to lead to you running out of money. Not knowing your numbers is what's going to lead to you borrowing way more money than you can pay back. You need to know those numbers, because you need to know if you're charging enough for your product, or are you overcharging for your product, and that's why you're not getting the sales, you're not converting. I know that's a ton, and I know I talk fast, so you would not think I'm from the South. But y'all can ask anything within that scope, and if I don't know it, I won't make it up. I'll tell you I don't know.
Question time. I know I have questions, but I want to see if anybody else has questions first.
I have a question for Amy.
Hey, Mark.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Amy, if you recall, in 2012, as owner of My Natural Resources, I sold you on the idea of upgrading your Marche de Macarons South Side location with brighter, more energy efficient lighting. If you recall, the sales process was easy. My sales pitch was, let me put in a brighter bulb into your fixture to compare with the existing lighting.
It was a good pitch. I think I bought.
Yes, and I then upgraded your entire location.
Yes.
My question for you is, have you hired salespeople, and how have you incentivized them?
So I don't really have a sales team, but I do have a staff. And so I'm going to kind of, I don't have a sales team, but I'm going to parlay this. My husband's in sales, so I've got a little bit of experience with that. And I primarily do the majority of my sales. So, but how I incentivize anybody, and like I said, this is what would incentivize my husband as a salesperson, is empowerment. You want to empower your team. My staff, I get them to buy in on all these crazy ideas that I come up with. And trust me, there's 1,000 of them. And they buy in on them because I make the process, I make them part of the process. I let them, for instance, my logo design here this label was done by one of my full-time members of Blue Poppy. And she wanted, I'm like, just do what feels right for you. Give me some ideas of what you've come up with and we'll make a decision. I didn't micromanage, and I do not micromanage my staff. I empower my staff. If I micromanage my staff, then I'm constantly doing their job and my job. And I can't do that with a whole lot of efficiency. So I empower my staff, which means I want to hear their ideas. What motivates me is not necessarily what motivates them. I want to know what motivates them. What's their thing that makes them happy? Some people it's affirmation, just being told every day that they just do a great job. Some people it's commission, more money, bonuses. I mean, but we're all wired differently. And I want my staff and my sales team or whatever to perform at their highest level. And so I need to find out from them what makes them tick. Because what makes me tick is not necessarily what makes them tick. And if I can clue in to each of my people's gifts, again, like what I'm saying in the beginning, assemble a team, and I want to draw out their gifts, and hopefully their gifts are better than my gifts. Yes. Then I have a team that's going to go out and buy the idea that I'm selling. And then also empowered people are happy people. I want my staff to work for me for a long time. It costs me a lot of money to transition staff. Business owners don't realize how expensive staff turnover is from the bottom line. My baker's been with me for 7 years. She can now make decisions about 95% of the time the exact way I would make the decision, and she doesn't have to call me because I trust that she knows what she's doing. So I would say for anything that you're doing, empower the people who work for you, get them on board with your vision, but find out what makes them tick, because it won't necessarily be what makes you tick. And then reward to their language, not to your own.
Yes. When you empower them and learn what their talents and attributes are, what their goals are, then yes, it's a true partnership, as you said.
Yeah, and then help them achieve those goals.
Yes. Another question I have is, have you successfully sold your Blue Poppy designs or any other products in other online marketplaces successfully? Let's say Etsy, eBay, Amazon, some of the others?
So I am on Etsy with Blue Poppy Designs. And I would say the platform is really super saturated. And so it's hard to kind of carve out a niche for that, but I do. I get sales. Etsy seems to kind of serve me up a bunch of sales, and it seems like they drop me from their algorithm, and then I kind of dull out, and then they kind of serve me up again, just enough to keep me going, and then they drop me down. Fair, which you've heard me mention, is basically like an Etsy, but it's an online to the trade marketplace. And I have had tremendous success, and the people who are buying there are putting it in their stores. So I've had tremendous success in that space. Blue Poppy is also on Amazon, handmade. I can't say that I've had a tremendous amount of success. Again, big platform, hard for me to carve out, get found. But I find, I mean, I've had success on Facebook Marketplace, though, in my local area, posting my product in the different groups. Those have generated, you know, quite a decent, if I remember to do it, those generate quite a decent amount of sales. Again, it really depends on what your space is and how competitive your space is. And you're going to have to kind of figure out what you do, how many other people do what you do, and what is your different take on that to set you apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm on everything. I believe in when I approach any business, I will try to create as many spokes of the wheel as I can, because I want diversity of income streams so that I can, you know, so that if one goes down, I'm not out of business.
Yes. Yeah, obviously a lot of marketing channels and marketplaces these days to choose from. And as you said, carving a niche and getting found is certainly a challenge.
Amy, so you talked a little bit about failure in there, you know, with the furniture business. And I know you talked about kind of how you got started in entrepreneurship, but I do think, I mean, very young. And I do think that's somewhat rare, but I do think there's certain people are just made for it and have it from the start. And it sounds to me like you kind of did. And so there's kind of twofold to the question. It's like, what do you think? Like, I know you said you sold lemonade in Hilton Head at a young age, but then also, like, what do you think it is that makes you so resilient to failure and just kind of get back up and start a whole nother business after the furniture business experienced the loss it did?
So, okay, I'm going to pull back the curtain here. Oz gets to be revealed. So a lot of times I fake it till I make it. I mean, I've had a really challenging week this week. Just again, entrepreneurship can be like really lonely sometimes. And I have good days and I have bad days. I do think truly that true entrepreneurship is something that's in your DNA. I know you can take classes on entrepreneurship and all that kind of stuff, but I'm like a fourth generation entrepreneur. My grandparents own their own businesses. My parents own their own businesses. And it just kind of is, my children have started a business. Matthew and James have a new business. Failure is part of it. You've zigged and you really should have zagged. It's part of it. And sometimes failure hurts a whole lot. I mean, I will tell you, when we lost our business, I was 39 years old. I had 3 children. Which was a much different space when I started the business, when I was dating my husband, when we started the business. And we lived in a little ghetto house somewhere here in Savannah. I think our rent was like $500 a month. It was cheap. And when we lost our business, it broke me. I will tell you, it broke me for a while. I spent about 3 weeks in the bed. My husband finally was like, you're going to have to kind of get up and get going. This is not you. I fortunately had an opportunity. I'm a big person who says yes to a lot of things. I look for opportunities. I like opportunities, and I tend to say yes to opportunities, whether I understand fully what the opportunity is going to yield. But I said yes to a gentleman who asked me to come and be a chaplain at a hospital, because I have a degree also in religion. And I said yes. And I was about as low emotionally that I had been in a long time. And I said yes to that opportunity. And I went in and I sat with people who were losing their loved ones. And it helped me put in perspective my loss versus the greater loss. And it made me feel that maybe this wasn't an anomaly, this successful business. What created that success I had to buy in was really something that was within me. It wasn't just lucky. Now, I haven't duplicated that success. And I mean, I've been successful in my other businesses, don't get me wrong, but I was a millionaire by the time I was 30. I have not duplicated that. I work a lot, but yeah, I had to kind of I had to get the negative voice out of my head, which is something that in failure exemplifies. When you don't close the sale, that negative voice exists in all of us. And people, the really big misconception about me is that people think I'm just on all the time. I'm just like this rock star going all the time. And it's just always just this. And I'm a force. I'm hard to kind of keep up with, but that's not reality. I sometimes just have to drive out to Tybee and cry all the way to Tybee and all the way back because the plan that I thought was going to happen didn't happen. Didn't work out the way I wanted it to. I will tell you, last year, this time, I was as scared as I had been. Well, March 15th. I know the date, how scared I was, because I had lost my last business in that recession. And I came home that night and I told my husband, I said, I am as scared as I have been. I don't know what to do. This is going to happen, and I have no control over what's about to happen. None of us did a year ago. Things were happening and they were not within our control. And I was afraid. People who had called me that Monday were like, you just sound really stressed. You don't sound like you. I'm like, oh, we got a pandemic and it's coming and we're going to have to, and I was scared. What I do with that fear personally is I take that fear and I start writing down ways to chart a path that I feel like I have more control over. That's my method. When I have a plan that I can trust myself to, and I trust myself to execute the plans I come up with, even if they have to change, that gives me a sense of at least being able to keep moving forward. And I talk a lot about that. Is everything I do is about forward momentum. It's all about moving forward. Even if moving forward, I don't know what the path is. Treading water, you're going to drown. You're going to run out of energy. I got to keep moving forward. So everything I do is really purposeful in, at least in my mind, that I've done failure. It doesn't feel good, but I've done success after failure. I've done success before failure. I trust that my gut says that even when things don't work out, that something will present itself. And that's why, like I said, I stay constantly open to opportunities. People put things like, hey, do you know a speaker to speak at the Creative Coast? I nominated myself. Like, yeah, I can do this. I constantly look for ways to make myself available for whatever opportunities might present themselves. Did that answer it okay?
Yeah, I think you did a great job. I just curious, I think that is a lot of times what keeps people from entrepreneurship too. You talked about this like hesitancy to like really put yourself out there and to even see if people want your ideas. And I think people stop before they even really get started because it's like, well, what if people don't like this? What if I do, and then I can't keep up with it and I fail? And so it's interesting to hear your perspective on that. And, especially the bit about being a chaplain, I definitely have experienced loss too. And I think it does just put in perspective like what real loss is, and like you can get through the failures in life. But
don't get me wrong, losing my business hurt. It hurt, to the core. So I don't minimize failure. Failure, is part of life. I try to teach my children from an early age that try it. You may not make the team, but you have 100% of not making the team if you don't try out for. You may not be picked for the lead in the play, but you definitely aren't picked for the lead in the play if you don't audition for the play. That takes a level of resiliency to not internalize that and make yourself feel like a big failure, because truthfully, failure just happens. I do not succeed at everything I attempt. I try to highlight the successes, but I do not succeed at everything I attempt by any stretch of the imagination. So if that's what you heard out of this, you heard it wrong. I fail all the time. I work quickly, though. I find myself when I work quickly into getting an idea to something that I love to work on. I work on that little weird edge of momentum. I kind of ride that razor's edge. It's where I kind of excel, though it sounds kind of uncomfortable, but I like it.